What if I told you that one of the most profound insights into masculinity came from someone who spent 18 months secretly living as a man? The story of journalist Nora Vincent completely changed how I think about gender roles in our society.
That's such a fascinating premise for an investigation. What exactly drove her to take on such an intense experiment?
Well, in the early 2000s, she wanted to understand masculinity from the inside out. She didn't just want to observe, she transformed herself completely into a man she called Ned, with makeup for stubble, voice coaching, the works. But what she discovered was far from what anyone expected.
What kinds of environments did she put herself in to really understand the male experience?
She went all in, joined men's support groups, worked in sales, even spent time in a monastery. But you know what really got to her? Dating as a man. She wrote about how exhausting it was to always be the initiator, facing constant rejection. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Being a man is not what I thought. It's hard and lonely and not at all the power trip I imagined."
That's really eye-opening. As women, we often don't consider that perspective of constant rejection and initiation.
Right? And it went way beyond dating. In the workplace, in social settings, even in casual environments like bowling leagues, she noticed this constant pressure on men to compete and prove themselves. But here's the kicker. They couldn't show any vulnerability about how exhausting this was.
So what you're saying is she basically discovered that male privilege isn't quite what we think it is?
Exactly. She went in expecting to find all these advantages, but instead discovered what she called an emotional prison. Men were expected to be these stoic, unbreakable figures. In those support groups, she saw men who were deeply lonely but had literally forgotten how to express their emotions.
That must have taken an enormous psychological toll on her, living with that kind of pressure day in and day out.
Yeah, it really did. The experiment actually led to a severe psychological breakdown. She had to check herself into a hospital for depression afterward. And sadly, in 2022, after years of struggling with mental health issues, she ended her life through assisted suicide in Switzerland.
That's absolutely heartbreaking. Do you think her work has helped create more space for conversations about masculine vulnerability?
Well, there's been some progress since the early 2000s when she did this experiment, but many of the fundamental issues she identified are still very present. You know what's interesting? She was already someone who challenged gender norms, an openly lesbian woman writing for major publications like the Los Angeles Times and the Village Voice.
How do you think her personal identity influenced her approach to this experiment?
I think it gave her a unique perspective. She wasn't just looking at masculinity as an outsider, she was really trying to understand it from multiple angles. And what she found was that these rigid gender roles hurt everyone, regardless of how they identify.
The depth of her commitment is remarkable. 18 months is a long time to maintain such an intense deception.
And it wasn't just about the deception. She had to navigate everything from using public restrooms to maintaining professional relationships, all while processing the psychological impact of essentially living a double life. She wrote this powerful quote, "Men are suffering. They don't have permission to feel, to cry, to talk, and that breaks them."
Looking back, what do you think is the most important legacy of her work?
You know, I think it's the way she showed that understanding gender isn't just about recognizing privilege or disadvantage. It's about seeing the full humanity in everyone's experience. She went in thinking she'd resent masculinity, but came out with deep empathy for men's struggles.
That's quite a powerful transformation in perspective.
And maybe that's the most valuable lesson from her experience, that real understanding requires us to look beyond our assumptions and really see the human experience behind the social roles we all play. Her work wasn't about criticism or mockery. It was about understanding and empathy.